Gonzalo, are you ready? All right.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gonzalo Chavez. I'm a sophomore at the Urban Assembly Gateway School for Technology. For my AP Create task, I programmed the computerized version of Blackjack from scratch. I was able to complete it with the help of what I learned in my AP Computer Science Principle class. It has improved my math and logic skills and exposed me to a new language. It taught me about collaboration as well. We took the first ever AP Computer Science Principle exam last month. It's been challenging, but I was able to learn so much about computer science. I will continue to take another AP Computer Science class next year to build on my work. The new AP Computer Science Principle course and all that is happening at Gateway is possible because the city is investing in the Computer Science for All initiative. I'm on track to being a first-gen college student. I'm hoping to follow a path into software engineering or accounting because both requires concepts in math and logic. With multiple computer science APs, I know I'm on the path to being ready for college and ready for a great career. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Mayor de Blasio.
Thank you so much, Gonzalo. Well done. So I just want to brag about Gonzalo for a moment. So as he said, his goal is to be the first generation in his family to go to college. He is well on his way. A classic New York City story, Gonzalo. Comes from a family of Ecuadorian immigrants, lives in the Polo Grounds houses, hard-working young man working his way up. This is an example of what we're so proud of in this city, the next generation coming along and focusing on the subject matter. We need more and more young people to focus on computer science. So as you said, you're part of the first class to ever take the AP Computer Science Principles exam. This is a really good example to the city, your personal example, and this whole group we met with upstairs of a new generation coming up that's going to focus on this subject and have now the AP courses to help you all do it. So let's give Gonzalo one more round of applause. We look forward to reading about you one day. So Gonzalo provides us a glimpse into the city's future. We saw upstairs something very exciting, the energy, the focus. I was, as I said upstairs, stunned that all those young folks could keep focused on their work, despite all of us being in the room and all of the TV cameras going. But that's an example of how much they care about what they're learning and how much they see it as their future. This is an example of the excellence part of equity and excellence, our vision for our public schools. This is the shape of things to come. More and more young people taking AP courses. And I will say, although math and science were not my strongest suit, nothing makes me happy. Maybe it was good for you, but it wasn't for me. No, but nothing makes me happier than seeing more and more young people focused on math and science, and particularly computer science, because we need to turn out a talented generation for the future of the city, for the workforce of tomorrow, for the future of the country. And the New York City Public Schools are helping to lead the way in that work. So this, to me, is an example of a vision that is taking hold, but I want to emphasize the outset, a vision that only works because of mayoral control of education. The big changes needed in this school system can only happen when we have a governance system that allows for fast, bold change. It does not work if politics interferes. It doesn't work if patronage interferes. It doesn't work if everything's balkanized. The big changes you're seeing, like this amazing growth of AP courses all over the school system, are only possible when there's unity of command and one person responsible and one person who is held responsible by the people of this city. That accountability system is working wonders for our kids. So we're going to be talking more about this today. And you're going to hear from some very important leaders of the business community of this city. Just want to say up front, thank you to some other folks who are here from my administration, First Deputy Mayor Tony Shorus and my senior advisor Gabrielle Fialkoff, both of whom played central roles in the many, many improvements we've made in our schools. I also want to thank someone who has been a leading voice helping the legislators in Albany to know how strongly the business community in this city feels about mayoral control. Kathy Weil, the president and CEO of the Partnership for New York City. I thank you for your efforts. And a special thank you to Tim Chen, the computer science teacher from the Urban Assembly, whose good work we saw upstairs. Tim, you got a lot to be proud of there. So very quickly, look, equity and excellence comes from the experiences that I have had as a parent and a public servant, from the experiences Carmen has had. We knew these were the two missing links in our school system. Our schools were not aiming for a high enough standard, and there wasn't fairness across the school system. We had to change both those things. We believe in equity. We believe it is essential to the values of this city. But equity has to come hand in hand with excellence, or our kids will simply not be prepared for what's going on in today's economy and today's world. That's why we made big changes. And what I want to emphasize is these changes are happening very, very quickly. And this is the beauty of the mayoral control system. We're talking about things happening with lightning speed. You saw pre-K grow by 50,000 students a year in just 2 years' time. And we're about to do the same over the next few years with 3K. You saw what we were able to do with providing after-school programs for every middle school student. You saw the growth of AP classes, again, with record speed, including to high schools that never had them before. These are the kind of changes that we need, and there's a lot more that has to be done. The status quo is far from acceptable. There's a lot more that has to be done. So we're announcing today 115 more high schools will be offering new AP courses next year. Again, as part of the rapid change on the AP front, we know we need to get more and more schools to a point of equity. And it pains me to think about, again, some schools that have had AP courses literally for generations, like the school my son Dante went to, Brooklyn Tech. AP courses have been the norm for literally generations. But there are high schools that never had a single one. That not only sends the wrong message, it doesn't allow us to tap into the potential of our children, which resides in every single zip code. So 115 more schools will have AP courses starting in September. 32 of them will be schools that for the very first time will have an AP course. And this means we will now be at a point of 410 schools that will have AP courses next school year. Just to conclude, before I turn to my colleagues, it is the right thing to do to improve the quality levels of our schools for every reason, morally, humanly, in terms of fulfilling the potential of our kids. But I think of it very practically as well. I've talked to a lot of the business leaders of our city, and I want you to know something I don't think is acknowledged often enough. One of the number one things they ask, and one of the number one things they raise consistently, is their concern that they want to see constant improvement in the quality of our public schools. There may be a lot of assumptions about what business leaders care about, but if you actually ask them point blank, they will tell you, probably right after public safety comes the quality of the school system. And the fact that there's an understanding that the workforce of tomorrow is going to have to be more sophisticated than the workforce of today. And our schools have to lead the way in that effort. So this is about the future of New York City in terms of our economy, in terms of our ability to be a place where there's good, high-paying jobs. It all revolves around making these changes in our schools, and they can only happen because of mayoral control. The old system literally didn't produce these changes. We have plenty of fact to go with this point. Just look at those decades under the previous system of school governance. These big changes didn't happen, period. They didn't, they couldn't. The system was mired in chaos and corruption. Only under mayoral control have big changes occurred. And as I turn to my colleagues, I remind everyone, and it's one of the most profound and obvious examples, when Mayor Bloomberg achieved mayoral control of education, and I applaud him for it, our graduation rate in New York City was hovering around 50%. As of the end of last school year, we were at 72.5%. That change happened in less than 15 years. We're going to go a lot farther because now we have the tools to actually reach so many kids who were being left behind before. So with that, I want to turn to our Chancellor. She has done an extraordinary job taking this opportunity for bold change and putting it into action. Our Chancellor, Carmen Fariña.
Well, thank you. As someone who has been in the system over 50 years, which I think is just going to be put in my tombstone, I want to be clear that this system, mayoral control, does work. And it works for several things. You don't have a balkanized system, which every borough, or even within each borough, people can have expectations that are different depending on kids' zip codes. We started this administration very clearly saying all kids can succeed. Some kids may need more support than others, but everyone can succeed. And the AP courses in particular are part of that. It's also about computer science not being for a chosen few or for kids who are pre-tested to get into a program. The other thing that is very clear about the AP courses, it means that all the teachers have to be retrained and go for more training. So there was a time when only teachers who were interested in teaching these courses would go for training. We're now saying that this is an expectation that all teachers who want to teach advanced placement courses will have the training they need, and it's happening in every single borough and every single school. And just one example is a model school. Lehman High School in the Bronx was one of the very first high schools that we turned into co-located campus. 7 schools on that campus, only one was providing AP courses. Now they have 11 AP courses, a single bell schedule. Kids can take AP courses across the entire campus. That's what happens when you're able to, with one voice, say to all the superintendents, this is what our expectation is, this is what we want to see you do, and then everyone gets out there and gets the work done. And could not have happened if every community was making their own decisions, and some communities, well, obviously kids who live in this zip code should have this, versus kids in another zip code who couldn't. And the other thing that is really particularly important about the AP courses for these students that we met today, it's not may I go to college? The expectation is you will go to college. High school is only the third step. You went to elementary school, you went to middle school, high school, and what college are you going to? I never ask any of our high school students anymore, how many of you are going to college? I want to know where you're going to college, what are you going to major in? And that level of expectation is because this is a passion for both the mayor, myself, and the entire staff. We want to make sure that New York City is the best urban system in the entire country.
Well said. Thank you, Chancellor. Now, speaking of going to college, we asked the students in the room upstairs, was it their expectation? You saw all the hands go up. When it comes to understanding what our young people will need to get into the college of their choice and what kind of training they need to succeed in the future, one of the gold standards in this country for determining that is the College Board. And one of the strongest voices that I've ever heard on why we need to focus on more AP classes for more young people is the President and CEO of the College Board, David Coleman.
Thank you. With such leaders of business and government here before you, I come as a humble servant of data. I'm a research guy and lead a research institution called the College Board that is responsible for the advanced placement program for SAT and other programs like it. But I just want to share with you some facts behind this discussion of mayoral control. Please don't breeze over lightly the tidal wave that the mayor described in graduation rate improvement in New York City under 2 mayors. I kind of want to put all the partisan issues aside and simply talk about the tidal wave of growth between what was hovering around 55% to 73% graduation rates is an amazing shift in trajectories and has happened with remarkable continuity across different mayors, but consistent mayoral leadership and focus and directed focus. The second fact is that advanced placement growth over that 10-year period is roughly 122%. But in this area, this mayor has acted with particular force. The growth over the years of an administration is a hockey shift change. Just last year, in AP, the exams rose 8.4% from 41,000 students to 45,000 students. And the greatest trick, the really interesting question, is it is easy to say the phrase, we want both equity and access. Equity, excellence, and access. But if I were to tell you, if I can be informal, that I was suddenly letting everyone into a club where we used to have a velvet rope outside, would you assume the club would be as excellent to go to? When we say we're letting everyone into something, our assumption is the quality will go down.
That's right.
It just is. It's a very native thought we all have. That was perhaps the worst analogy ever made in a public setting. But
very accessible.
Thank you. But what happened with performance, you might ask me? Great that they're taking it. Did they perform? Citywide, while AP grew 8.4%, the number of students passing, that's a lot on a huge base. 8.2% more students passed the exam. Performance matched that growth. Let me tell you what I find, though, soul edifying, which is, among African American students in this city, long excluded from the possibility of advanced placement in their lives, 14.1% more black students took the exams. 18% more passed them. That is serious advance. In the Latino community, 9% more Latino students took them. And in the Latino community, it was 10.8% more who passed the exams. To be clear, performance among students who have long not had the opportunity to take advanced placement is increasing even faster than their access, which shows that there is a principle of mayoral control that matters a great deal, and that is to act swiftly, with equity, to unlock talent that would otherwise remain hidden. And that's what I think is simply at stake in the discussion we're having, as you saw in the AP Computer Science Principles course upstairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, next, I want to introduce someone who has a lot of different responsibilities. He has a day job that keeps him busy all over the world, but still has found a lot of time for New York City as co-chair of the New York City Partnership. But lately, Steve Schwarzman has gotten some additional responsibilities in terms of the federal agenda as well. So I want to particularly thank him for his focus on this city despite all his other responsibilities. I want to thank him for his focus on mayoral control at this decisive moment where a vote is looming this month. And just say on behalf of the people in New York City, really appreciate that you are focusing on this issue at this moment, even though there's another 100 things that you could be doing right now. So the chairman and CEO of the Blackstone Group, Steve Schwarzman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm here because it's important, and I believe in this. With strong backing from the business community, New York State wisely enacted mayoral control in 2002, replacing a dysfunctional and highly politicized system of school governance. It's a powerful accountability mechanism to help make sure that teachers get the support they need and our city's students receive the highest quality education possible. We believe the current system is the best way to manage the nation's largest and most complex school system. The proof is in the improvements in performance and graduation rates that we've seen under both Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor de Blasio. Yesterday, the partnership released a letter to Albany officials in which CEOs of more than 100 companies, actually it was 105 major companies, urged the long-term extension of mayoral control. We hope Albany will move swiftly to extend mayoral control so we can continue building on that process. And I must say that what the mayor mentioned about having students who are really trained for application in the real world is so critically important. It's a major issue all over the country. There's enormous focus on workforce management, workforce development, providing the opportunities for students to be matched to the jobs that are important. And in New York City, where we're a service economy, we have to have people coming out of the schools to be able to fill those spots. And we've got a country where there are huge numbers of jobs that aren't filled that are available. And that's something that we have to correct.
Amen. Thank you very much, Steve. I very much appreciate your support and want to express my appreciation to the 105 CEOs who signed on to that letter. I know you have some other responsibilities to attend to, and you won't be able to stay for the whole press. And he is the CEO of Infor. It's my pleasure to present Charles Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I couldn't tell you how excited I was to see New York City high school students programming this morning. We had a session before this started. And it certainly reminded me, I've been through the same thing that you guys are going through. When I was 15 or 16, got exposed to some AP courses in technology, ended up taking some courses at a local college. And had that not happened, I wouldn't be running a company with 16,000 people and ended up majoring in computer science. So it's important to get access early. So giving the mayor more control to be able to make these things happen quickly I think is critical. As I look around my customer base and travel all over the world, we're in 170 countries. This is what's happening all around the world. People are investing in their young people. They know that every job and every industry is going to be related to technology in some way. And New York City needs to lead this. There's no question about it. We have always led in everything else. So the best way to do that is to have an organizational structure so you can move quickly. This is a very dynamic area when it comes to technology, which is the area I'm interested in. And that means making decisions based on facts and results and no other issue. And if you have some federated committee trying to make these decisions, just other incentives and other objectives become more important. So I just want to underscore that we support the mayor's control of the school system. That's what we need.
Thank you very much, Charles. And finally, I can tell you one thing. Folks in the real estate industry care deeply about the future of the city, and they also understand the quality of our school system underlies so many of the decisions people make about whether to come here, stay here, invest here, et cetera. So it's my pleasure to introduce the president of the Real Estate Board of New York, John Banks.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. Excuse me. For the past 15 years, we've seen steady progress in the school system and the education provided to our students. We'd be hard-pressed to find a city throughout the country that has done more for our students. The mayor mentioned AP for all, but there's also computer science for all, there's algebra for all. The graduation rates here in the city have gone up steadily, and I can tell you that everyone within the real estate industry is completely supportive of mayoral control. We would not have achieved the success that we have without having a strong leadership both in the prior administration and the current administration. A return to the old community board, school board system would create havoc and would not serve our children well. So I just want to lend my voice to the support for mayoral control. And to Gonzalo, I want to just give a quick shout out. I'm a first-generation college student, and you're way more prepared than I was.
That is an excellent last word. All right. We're going to take questions on the announcement today regarding the advanced placement courses and on mayoral control and education topics in general, and then we will turn to other topics. So first, anything about mayoral control, et cetera.
I have an education-related question. This is your third education announcement of the week, your second press conference. You took some criticism for not having a press conference about the school diversity plan. I wanted to ask, one, whether you think that plan is perhaps less important than the gym and AC announcement and today's mayoral control announcement. And two, the administration has shown a reluctance to use the word segregation and integration when talking about the state of the schools. Obviously, a report found that the city schools are the most segregated in the nation. I mean, do you believe that New York City schools are racially segregated? And if so, why not use the word?
The concept here that governs everything we do is equity and excellence. I think we made that really clear. And there's a lot of elements to achieving equity and excellence. The things we talked about this week, I think, are particularly fundamental to that vision. Having mayoral control of education allows all other elements of the equity and excellence vision to be achieved. Advanced placement courses right some of the biggest wrongs of the past in terms of our school system by providing the highest quality education in every part of the city. Fixing the physical plant, which also often was a question of inequity. It's not a surprise that a lot of the schools that didn't have air conditioning and didn't have space for gyms also happen to be in less privileged communities. We think all of these things are fundamental to the changes we have to make. The plan that was put forward in terms of diversity is a first step. There's a lot more that we intend to do. I think in this case we have an embarrassment of riches this week. We have a lot, we're announcing a lot that's going on, but I can safely say that's going to be a major focus, and it's an important first step. I don't get lost in terminology. I think the notion of saying we have to diversify our schools is the best way to say it. Yes?
On the same topic, the plan was criticized by some for being too incremental, not bold enough. Do you think those are fair, the diversity plan?
I think it's what we believe are strong first steps. Any turning of the supertanker takes a certain number of steps. And this is what we think we can do to get started. You all know, I've talked about it a lot of times, a very profound additional step would be if Albany would change the admissions rules related to the specialized schools, which I think are fundamentally unfair right now. I think they're unfair because we see such a lack of diversity in some of our specialized schools, and they're also unfair because they rely upon a single standardized test. I don't think anything should rely upon a single standardized test.
Here.
But this is a strong first step. There will be more to come. Yes.
That topic, would you be considering eliminating school zones or creating enrollment lotteries?
You know, when it comes to school zones, those are decisions we make by law with the Community Education Council. So that's a very localized situation. A good example on the Upper West Side in CEC 3 was the rezoning of the schools that the CEC initiated, and we worked with them on, and we ended up with a very positive result that also furthered the diversification of the schools on the West Side. But that's going to be a district-by-district discussion. Yes?
You said you don't get caught up in terminology. Do you yourself agree with the conclusion that many researchers have come to that the city schools are heavily segregated? Do you think that's an accurate terminology?
I think we have a problem, and as I've said to you many times, it's a problem rooted in history that goes far beyond our school system. And today, again, we're here first and foremost to talk about mayoral control, which is the profound issue facing us right this moment. I'll certainly have more to say over the coming months as we deepen our vision of how to address the need for greater diversity in the schools. But I think the problem is much, much bigger than our school system. Yes?
Given that the problem goes beyond the levels of segregation in the schools that are in the elementary schools in particular linked to residential segregation, do you have any plans to sort of collaborate or match your housing policies, particularly your affordable housing policies, with plans to integrate schools?
I think the affordable housing plan, by its very nature, helps to bring people from different communities together. But again, I would go back to, and it's a bigger discussion I look forward to having at the right time, I go back to the origin of equity and excellence. We are concerned deeply with the kids right now in our schools who are living in a situation that is not yet fair. And we have to do a lot more right now to address it. The larger issues related to housing patterns and economic realities, which again were created over not just decades but over centuries, there's a lot we would like to do to start to change that for the long term. But my concern, and why I always make clear the sort of hierarchy of need here, is we have a right now problem. And it's not abstract, it's practical and it's real. We've got kids right now that we have to reach better, and the kids coming up right now. That's why we've done things like pre-K and we're moving to 3K. That's why we're doing advanced placement courses right now to reach a lot of kids who would not have had them otherwise. We have to improve the quality levels of our public schools, and we have to do it in a way that promotes equity. That's the mission now. That's the central mission. And so, you know, I will look forward to a continued dialogue, but I need people to understand that's how I see the priority, because I'm concerned about reaching kids in the here and now. Yes?
So Albany controls a pretty small subset of high schools, but
What, please?
Albany controls a pretty small set of high school admissions, but there's a lot that is in the city's control, including about a third of the schools are screened, require test schools and grades and things like that. Do you have any plans to address the screen schools that are in your control?
Yes, absolutely. Some of that you see the beginnings of in the plan that was put out this week. There will be more to come. I personally want us to use every tool we have. I want to make sure there's maximum access for kids of all backgrounds. That has not been the case previously. And I think kids really benefit from learning together, kids of different backgrounds. So yeah, I think there is more we can do about the screen schools. I think the situation with the specialized schools is particularly troubling. And again, I look forward to the day when that gets resolved. I think that's something we have to do for the good of New York City. But yeah, we can do a lot more with the screen schools. Yeah.
You've talked in the past about desegregating schools. You've talked about people making real estate decisions about where they're going to live and investments in communities. So is it sort of a political choice to go very slowly and do these steps first and not risk sort of the blowback that would come with controlled choice?
No, look at the Upper West Side. I mean, again, I'm not sure controlled choice is the best model. That's something we would talk about with each CEC, but look at the Upper West Side. And I think if you know something about politics, and I believe you do, the highest voting assembly districts in New York State, and there was a lot of controversy. But we thought, the Community Education Council was right. We thought it was a very thoughtful plan. It was about a lot of things. And that's why I want to remind people, when you're thinking about a plan for children, the first question is what's going to help children? And again, this is a much bigger discussion that I look forward to having. Today we're here to talk about some other things, but I will offer this. On that plan, we had to think about the quality of the schools. We had to think, which was uneven. We had to think about access to the schools, because we had schools with wait lists, which are very rare, and that's a very troubling reality. Have a zoned elementary school with a wait list. We had to solve that problem. We had to think about fairness to families that had thought they were going to one school and might have a change in their life. We had to think also about creating more diversity. And I think the CEC3 did a great job of balancing those factors. And there's plenty of unhappy people. There were unhappy elected officials. There was controversy. But it was a smart plan, and we moved it right in the middle of the place that is politically considered one of the very most important places in the city and state. So there's no lack of will, but I think it's important to recognize we're looking at more than one factor all the time. The quality of education for students is paramount in this discussion. And that's what, so when we talk about, we have to understand, we need any plan to start with the quality education for all students, including those who have not gotten a fair shake previously.
Doesn't the fact that a more diverse school, an integrated school, directly lead to better education outcomes?
I don't think it's as simple as that, and David knows a lot more than me, but I don't think it's as simple as that. I think the question is what is going to help each school to be the best it can be, and here and now. And this is, to me, when you look at the things we're doing, and I've spent a lifetime in my own way working on social justice issues, things like pre-K for all are a response to history. They are righting wrongs of history, in my view. They are addressing the results of segregation in a way we could do very immediately and have a very high impact. So it's a bigger philosophical discussion again, but I think the equity and excellence vision is aimed right at that negative history, but it's the way we can have the biggest impact right away. Do you want to add, David?
Yeah, as you probably know, there's promising data from North Carolina about integration and academic performance. So I think there are promising signs that students from different backgrounds learning together advances academic performance generally. And I grew up in a more diverse New York City public school system and wish for it daily. But there's an important fact that I hope everyone with their evident concern about diverse academic performance really heard today, because it's very important. In schools where there was not advanced placement, like let's just cut to the chase, there were evidently many Black and Latino students who were fully able to perform college-ready work in high school, but without the opportunity could never show that. And I know it is a wonderful vision that they will all be in the same school or that we'll have many more, but it is undeniably and immediately wrong, no matter how unequally such students are distributed, that they do not, every one of them, have a chance to show their power. And that's the idea here. It's a very simple idea. I hope that isn't lost in this broader discussion, because whatever we do to move kids around, by the way, as you can tell, which I would love us to move with all deliberate speed to do so, but we cannot ignore our immediate imperative to offer all kids the chance to show their strength.
Yeah.
Piggybacking on Ben's question and point, and I'm not an education expert. Ben was a teacher. I was not.
I didn't know that. You were a teacher? For how many? Sorry to interrupt your question. For how many years?
About 8 years in the Boston area.
Wow. You've served your time.
Really?
Impressive.
Tell me about the new course when we're done.
So, my mother's a teacher, my aunts were teachers, but forgive me, but I thought that it's been pretty well established that actually integration and diversity is a critical part of having a quality education. So I guess I'm just wondering, should we have more urgency around that piece of the way we address our schools in general?
I think the simple answer is we believe we're really urgent about addressing inequity and the lack of quality education for so many kids. Look, this is something we think about very strategically. What's going to change kids' life right now? That change in the zoning on the west side took years. I'm very happy with the result, but it took years to be done the right way, and there was a lot of contention. We got there in the end. but that was one piece of one school district. There's a lot of other places where you couldn't even physically, geographically achieve something like that because there's not access to different populations so close together. So I understand the questions. Again, these are the same questions that have pervaded everything I've thought about my whole public life. But I need people to look squarely in the eye a really cold, hard reality. We've been all dealt a very imperfect hand a long time ago. What are we going to do about it? I say, right now, improve the quality of education for kids who've been left behind. Right now. While continuing to constantly look for ways to achieve diversification within some of the physical realities we have. I don't think there's a dichotomy. I think we're doing both. But I will tell you that our sequencing, I believe, has been right to focus on the big swaths where we could improve quality in the here and now, and then start to build out the diversification plan from there.
Follow-up. Do you personally believe that it is possible for the children of this city to get the education that they deserve without attending fully integrated and diverse schools?
Absolutely. And it's not, look, would I like a perfectly diverse school for every child? Yes, I would. I really would. I think that would be the optimal situation. To achieve that would take many, many years and be up against immense physical and geographical barriers. And that's where I want honesty in the discussion. I think you guys are right to press me and my team, but I think you guys also need to look at the hard reality of what we're dealing with physically and historically. If we were a small little place and all the different people of different backgrounds are really next to each other, this would be an easy equation. We're a huge sprawling place with a lot of separation of different populations. And therefore, it's going to take a series of steps to get better. But why would we delay the things we can do right now? I think part of the vision here, if you achieve equity and excellence, if you create a consistency across the entire school system, I've talked about this before, the quote-unquote good schools and the quote-unquote bad schools. Imagine the day when that concept is essentially arcane, when there's a broad confidence in schools in every neighborhood. That's going to be profoundly helpful to diversification. So we think that's the core of what our immediate mission is, to fundamentally improve the school system across the board and to create an equity model that's never existed before, while moving the bigger efforts, the bigger structural changes on diversity. But that's going to be a long-term effort because of what we're up against just physically. Questions on mayoral control, AP, anything else?
One more following up on Mara. She asked my question word for word, but just following
How dare her? Mara, you asked her question word for word. That was very insensitive.
I want to clarify your answer. So you are saying that you believe that racially separate schools can be equal?
You're asking it in a way that I think is leading the witness. I don't want that. I don't want that. I would love perfectly diverse and integrated schools. If I could achieve that with a stroke of a pen, I would do that right now. And in my lifetime, I've benefited from being in diverse schools. I wanted my children in diverse schools. I really get it. But again, we can have a conversation where we don't come to grips with hard realities, or we can level with the people of this city, and I'm trying to level with the people of this city. It's going to be a long, hard road to try to change such deep-seated realities. So to flip your question, since we know right now we have real geographical separation, if I said, oh no, people cannot learn if they're primarily surrounded by those of their own community, well then we're damning at least a generation of kids to not getting a high quality education. I don't accept that. We can make things work even within our imperfect situation today. But while we're doing that, we can walk and chew gum. We can also work for constant efforts at diversification, which we've done in downtown Brooklyn, which we've done on the Upper East Side, and the plan released this week is the beginning of doing it a lot of other places. So no, if I were to say we can't give kids an excellent education in the current dynamics, come on guys. Do you know how many decades it will take to fix all this? So would you really just tread water for those decades? I don't think that's fair. I think we have to fix the schools right now. Anything else on education? Teacher.
On AP, you've spoken a lot, I know you've spoken a lot about, different measures, but you've spoken out against standardized testing.
Yes.
Can you sort of square a little bit how you view AP courses, which move very quickly, are very focused on a test, and very often leave students without the sort of rest and other things that you've also spoken about?
I could attempt to restrain David, but it would not work. I will start and pass to David. Where I particularly am unhappy with high-stakes testing and the over-reliance on standardized testing is when it is the single determinative factor of one's future. Literally, a test, one standardized test, and you're either in Stuyvesant or you're not. Like, that's really profoundly shaping the child's future. I don't think that's fair. Nor would I ever want to see college admissions determined just by a standardized test, or any high school admissions, et cetera, et cetera. And we've moved away from the grading of schools, and we have moved away from a reliance on high-stakes testing and how we evaluate teachers and throughout our admissions process for students. So an AP course is part of a bigger portfolio that student brings forward. So that's why I think it's apples and oranges to begin with. But David is much more of an expert than I.
No, it's. I think the deep truth of your question is the worst thing the assessment industry has done is to confuse quick and smart. There are many gifted people, able people, who move more slowly. Even sometimes their slower movement is a sign of their intelligence and care in what they do. So I've made that a major priority over the last 5 years that I've led the College Board. In the new SAT, there is 45% more time per question than any other entrance exam in the country. In the revision of AP US History, which you used to teach, let me be rather blunt, as you can tell I'm prone to. You're exactly right about the old AP US test. It was a race through almost endless content, forcing teachers like you to not make a college, like the worst of college survey courses, actually. The new AP US course, the new exam, has roughly half the number of multiple choice questions on it than the old exam. The source material is right in front of you, so there isn't the drive towards endless content. Instead, the careful critical analysis of sources, drawing on a broader knowledge which is much better defined. So you were right, but we acted. I just want to tell you that your experience as a teacher is a true one and moved us to redesign not only the SAT, but AP exams themselves. I'd love you to take a look at the new one and tell me what you think, candidly.
Now, I want to see, because the mayoral control debate is happening right now, and a lot has been happening in Albany, if you have any questions on that before we move to other topics. Questions? Go ahead.
For Kathy, or anybody else other than the mayor, are you having conversations with Senator Flanagan, candid conversations about just getting this done and not making the mayor jump through hoops and go through some of these other mechanisms?
Certainly expressing that is our hope, that this won't be subject to horse trading in Albany, but unfortunately, all of this will come together probably in the middle of the night, and we'll all learn the next morning what happened. So we're making the case as best we can, including having a letter today that we're sending up to Albany on behalf of 105 major employers and business leaders in the city. So we're doing what we can do, and I think that reason will prevail, because it's clear that it would be so irresponsible to disrupt a governance system that is showing good results and replace it with nothing, because there isn't an alternative right now. I think that it will hopefully get done, as it has every year, but we'll go through some pain in the meantime.
Just a quick follow-on. I will not respond to the question. I will add I want to thank Kathy, because she's highly respected in Albany in general, but particularly the state Senate listens very carefully to what Kathy Wild says. And I think she has been a very powerful voice for mayoral control, and she's being kind and diplomatic as always. But I think she is quite clear how devastating the impact would be if we didn't have it. And I want to thank her. I think you've done a lot for the kids in New York City. Yes.
Kathy, do you think that there will be some changes or concessions or horse trading on charter schools in order to get mayoral control?
I don't know. The partnership has supported the expansion of charter schools, and we would like to see that happen as well, but we don't think these things should be linked or tied. We think that the importance of mayoral control, the importance of charter schools, both stand on their own, and and to politicize it is a big mistake.
Senator Flanagan is trying to make them.
I know that.
Do you think that his view in the Senate, given the fact that they have to deal with the Assembly, and we've all watched that happen in great detail, do you think that he'll prevail?
Well, I think that there will be a number of things at the end of session related to education and many other items that are in what they refer to as the big ugly, and none of us will know which was traded for what. It'll all come out in the wash, so we'll see.
Any other questions on mayoral control? Okay, before we go to other topics, I'm going to do a pop quiz. Now we have a pop quiz. We have a history expert in the room. What leading 18th century American figure wrote the phrase, the sometimes soldier and the summer patriot? Yeah? Now, you can't look it up, but don't go online. The sometime soldier and the summer patriot. Does anyone got it? Anyone? 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 18th century. Oh, man. Who is Thomas Paine? All right. No, it's not from Hamilton. All right. I think we're done. Last call on education questions. And our good friends, thank you so much. Thomas Paine. Not often, but I love Thomas Paine. I think Thomas Paine, I said to Charlene, he was downright punk Thomas Paine. He was edgy and way ahead of his time. All right. Other topics. David.
Just before adopting the budget, the council speaker added a term and condition to how money is spent in legal services, as you know. Do you plan to veto that section of the budget? And either way, do you think that this causes future problems in terms of how the negotiations work between the council and the mayors and the administration?
No and no. I think the bottom line here is we had a very productive budget process overall, obviously early and collegial. I don't agree with that particular move, but this issue will be resolved during the contracting process.
Because as speaking to lawyers who worked on the charter itself, they said that, essentially by putting a term or a condition on how money is spent, that really sort of handcuffs the administration in terms of how you can spend that money.
We believe that there's ample room to resolve it in the contracting process. That's our legal interpretation. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, while you do not control the subways.
Who does, Mara?
That's right, the governor does in the MTA. So while that is the case, subway riders have been suffering greatly. Just the other day, this F train got stuck underground for nearly an hour. I spoke to many of those people. They were there without AC. It seemed on the brink of being, frankly, dangerous, if not already. You often speak about issues of which you have little control. For example, actions of President Trump.
So there can be action. It parallels the mayoral control of education debate. I think when things are divided between lots of different power centers, nothing happens a lot of the time. I think it's really important to establish who's in charge and who's accountable, and that they be held accountable publicly. So I think there's been real progress in clarifying that the governor and the state of New York in general have responsibility for the MTA. That being said, the City of New York has tried in many ways to assist, including the $2.5 billion that we added to the MTA budget, even though there was no legal obligation to do so. And things that I've mentioned to you that we do all the time, like we collaborate on select bus service lines, where we invest in those specifically. But beyond that, I said the other day as a result of the F-train crisis, that the governor and the MTA have to come forward with a plan to address this current crisis. And I will be very adamant about that. I rode the F-train for many, many years. In fact, from 92 to 99, it was the only way I got around, or also the R train sometimes, because those are the two that go near my house in Brooklyn. And I didn't have a car until well into 1999. So for years and years and years, the F-train was the way I got around. I can absolutely relate to what people must have gone through at a horrible instant. We need to demand a plan of action immediately. And I've said previously, if it means shifting resources within the MTA away from other things to address this crisis, so be it. MTA historically has not focused enough of its energies on the New York City subway system, even though by far it's the number one.
Baseball. And the police said that they got a tip that some kids were essentially, I guess, wilding with baseball bats and being dangerous. However, from the video, it appears they were just coming back from playing baseball like kids do, and the police overreacted potentially and were waving a gun in their face. Does that concern you? I know you might not have seen the video, but is this type of incident something that you are worried about?
I don't want to pass judgment until I see the video. What you describe would concern me for sure, but I want to be fair and see the video and talk to the commissioner before making any judgment on this or offering any comment.
Yeah, you haven't heard of this in the last couple of days
No,
yet?
I have not. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I know you can't, I'm sorry for bringing this up again, but I know you can't speak for the city council speaker, but she says she's going to find a way to honor Mr. Rivera at the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Just your...
I think we've covered this subject matter. I've made clear this should be about Puerto Rico. And we had a reception at Gracie Mansion last night. My remarks were about Puerto Rico. About 3.5 million people right now are going through a profound healthcare crisis and economic crisis and aren't getting enough help from Washington. That's what I want to talk about. So she will do as she sees fit, but my focus is on Puerto Rico. Yeah, Marcia.
I have questions on two unrelated topics. The first is placard enforcement. I wonder how it's going since you announced your big crackdown.
It's just begun, and as you know, we're going to have to hire up a lot of the personnel we're going to need or reassign personnel to achieve it. We are deadly serious about this, and we're going to make it work, but it has literally just begun. So I think, it'll take several months to get up to full speed, and that's when we'll have a better idea on what impact it's going to have. But look, I think the word has gone out squarely that folks who use their placards inappropriately are really taking a risk, including the potential of having it revoked.
I mean, is your sense, given what your transportation commissioner said earlier in the week, that placard abuse contributes heavily to congestion?
Yeah.
Is that the reason why you're doing this?
No, it's one of many reasons. I think it does contribute to congestion. I just think it's unfair. It's not fair to people to have someone given an opportunity to use something for very specific purposes who then cheats and uses it for other purposes. That's not fair to everyone else. Parking's obviously limited in this city. So no one's above the law. Everyone has to follow the rules. And yeah, congestion's one reason, but I think the most fundamental reason is people who are given the right to have a placard are not allowed to abuse it.
This is the third time this week that you've taken questions from the media, and I wonder if this is something we should get used to or not.
I think we've established a good template in terms of what you will have as a guarantee, and then when we have specific occasions where we want to throw on more, we'll be throwing on more. There's a lot to talk about today that we think was very, very pressing, obviously, given what's happening in Albany. So we'll always reserve the right to add.
Mayor, I wanted to follow up on going back to the budget issue. What can you tell us about your current relationship with the Speaker? And Has your calculus at all been different because you are in an election year? The speaker is on her way out. Do you think that's at all affected the way that she's made these decisions? And
That she's made these decisions?
do you think it's part of the overall decision-making process for her? And is it part of yours since it is an election year?
I can't speak for her. I have always found her to be a person of integrity. I can't speak for how she weighs one year versus another. The relationship is fine. We agree on the vast majority of things, and we obviously partnered very well on the budget. If this is one dispute out of a $85 billion budget, that's pretty good. But no, for me, again, my belief is that this whole discussion should be about Puerto Rico. It was about anything but Puerto Rico to this day. The budget, okay. On the budget piece per se, we have a disagreement. It's a respectful disagreement. We fundamentally believe we will resolve it. But I think when you put it in the context of everything else, again, it's one disagreement against a backdrop of many hundreds of other issues. And no, it's just what I believe. It's in my view. I believe she believes her view. I think it's philosophical on that level. Yeah, Willie.
Related to what Gloria was talking about, the speaker has crusaded for years for the release of Oscar Lopez Rivera, and she very strongly was in favor of honoring him as a hero at the parade. You have said that you thought that it was a bad idea and were against giving him that honor. Tell us about the conversations that you had with her on this, which was such a fundamental issue for her.
I just want to put this behind. I'm obviously not going to go into private conversations. What I believe fundamentally is the forest got lost for the trees, and that for not just, I'm not talking about her and me, I'm talking about the whole city. I mean, guys, I would ask you to compare column inches and broadcast minutes on the plight of 3.5 million people who are, really central to this city because 700,000 New Yorkers are Puerto Ricans. How much attention is going to what's going on in Puerto Rico versus this one symbolic event? It's a parade. It's not an actual thing. It's a parade. An actual thing is healthcare. An actual thing is an economy that's failing for 3.5 million people. So that's what we should be talking about.
Trying to get at the relationship between you and
the relationship is fine as
conversation, more and more conversations about this specific issue.
Yes, we did.
Tell her.
I'm just not going to go into private conversations. Go ahead.
I have a follow-up on the budget, and then I also have a separate question. So when you say you think that you have the power to resolve it through the contracting process, does that mean that you think you have the power to spend the money while not following the council's condition?
Again, without getting into legal details I'm not expert in, the bottom line is I have very clear views on this matter. I appreciate that the speaker has clear views. We will resolve it in the contracting process. I am comfortable that the outcome will reflect what I think is appropriate. There's obviously plenty of time to keep conversations going with the council too, because this is the kind of thing that takes months to play out.
You reported in your financial disclosure form at least $250,000 in legal debt. Do you believe that what you reported covers all of your legal bills, or will there be more? And considering the Conflict of Interest Board ruling on a legal defense fund, have you figured out at this point how you're going to pay it?
We have not figured it out, and when we do, we'll tell you. And no, there's more going on, certainly with the accounting of the legal bills. That's an ongoing process, and when that finally gets to an endpoint, we'll tell you that as well.
Going back to the F-train problem, as you're familiar with the F-trains, they're older train lines, they're older cars, and the doors are locked, so you can't go in between the cars. On the newer trains, the 4, 5, and 6 lines, those trains allow you to pass through the cars. So is there a way that you making a statement to the MTA to start replacing those older trains? Because in an incident that we saw where the train was broken down in between stations, passengers were unable to go through those cars because they're locked. In addition to other trains were backed up, mechanisms were in place that pretty much could hamper rescuability on that particular line, and the R train is similar with the older locked trains.
So you raise an important point. Let me first do the broader part of that. To the previous question about what the city should demand of the governor and the state, we not only need a plan to fix the fundamental problems, which are about the signal system and the physical reality of the MTA. And obviously, again, we are now in the middle of a crisis where these breakdowns are happening more and more. But we also need an emergency response plan when, God forbid, one of these things happens. I mean, those folks were on that train for a long time under really horrible conditions. I want to be very clear. We will do anything and everything to work with the MTA to provide the most immediate response. NYPD, FDNY, any and all city agencies. There are different jurisdictions, but when it comes to addressing people in crisis, we're all wearing the same uniform. So we welcome, total cooperation and seamless, planning with the MTA on that front. And we'll certainly have those conversations right away to see how we can do, all of us can do better. On the question of the ability to move between the cars, so because I rode the subways for many years, I asked myself that question many times. I always, as a rider, preferred to go between the cars. You in a car, you don't like that car, it's crowded, it's hot, and the one next to it's air conditioned, whatever. I think riders prefer the ability to move between the cars. I'm not an expert on all the safety considerations, and I know that's a real concern as well. So what I would say is I'll certainly ask my members of the MTA board their view on that. As a consumer, I find it more appealing to be able to move between the cars and more gives you more options. In an emergency, I agree with you. There's an advantage. I think what that has to be weighed against is, does it create a safety concern in terms of day-to-day riding that might outweigh those other considerations? That's what we need to know.
The budget handshake, when you went to that handshake, were you under the impression that you and the speaker had an agreement on that immigrant defense money?
I thought it was a détente in the sense of we had differences, but we understood the ways it would play out.
And you were surprised that she...
Look, again, I'm not going to get into private conversations or staff conversations or anything. I thought things had been made clear all around. Sometimes in the legislative process, there's more clarification that's needed. You're talking about a big, sprawling budget. But again, it is a small item in the scheme of things, and I believe it will be resolved.
Just quickly on the legal debt, you felt like these investigations were wrong to begin with, that they shouldn't have occurred because you did everything the right way. So what's your level of frustration over having to pay back these debts for something you felt like shouldn't have happened to begin with?
I'm beyond frustration. I don't register that emotion anymore. Look, it is what it is. I said what I believed, that we had done things the right way. This is the world we're living in. It's something we have to find a way to deal with. Marcia.
You said that at some point, if the state and the MTA and the governor and the MTA board don't move fast enough to fix the subways, that you would be proposing your own plan through the members that you have on the MTA board. What's the breaking point? What's the point where you feel that you would have to have your members step in so that you could, reflect the frustrations that your constituents
Look, Marcia, absolutely, New Yorkers are frustrated with the situation in the subways. And this particular crisis, I would say, is the last month or two where it's really gotten epidemic, the number of breakdowns and all the electrical problems and everything else. Look, I absolutely am convinced the governor understands it's a crisis, and his most recent statements suggest he's taking responsibility for having to come up with a plan. I respect that. I don't have a specific day for you, but the time is coming soon where we have to see a vision, again, for fixing the overall crisis and moving resources towards the subways, if that's what it takes, because the MTA has a really big budget. Big annual budget and a big capital budget. So I don't think this is about lack of resources. This is about prioritizing our subway riders. And we also need that emergency response plan, which is something we will absolutely positively participate in any way that the state and the MTA need us to.
The need to get more signals and more subway cars, is it a question of sending money to those issues?
Well,
Work? I mean, it seems like we're at a crisis, but there's no way out of the crisis.
There's never no way out of a crisis. So let me say it this way. I'm sure the folks at the MTA are trying in a lot of different ways to address the issue. And I know some of them are complex issues, and some of these things will take a long time to fix. That being said, I've found one thing about any bureaucracy. There's always things you can do differently. there's always things that you can find a way to do in the short term that'll have an impact. So I think it's good that there's public pressure demanding those solutions. I think it's a fact that historically a lot of resources didn't go to the subways that could have and should have. So some of this, like everything else in the world, is a resource problem, and I believe the resources are there. I'm going to give Rich the last one. Go ahead.
Clarify something about the parade, because last night at Gracie Mansion, the speaker said that the award continues to be given to Oscar Lopez Rivera. Your administration has made clear that you don't believe he's being honored, and I just wanted to ask what the basis for that belief is.
I'm just not going to dwell on this. I think I've been very, very clear. He declined. I'm saying he declined. That's all there is to know. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, so in becoming the most prominent voice for the beleaguered strap hanger now, are you prepared for a more interesting relationship with the governor in regard to a back and forth about the subways?
You don't think it's interesting enough already? No, look, I don't think this is a contentious point. I think this is obvious and factual. And I have no pretensions about my role. The state runs the MTA, the governor runs the MTA. That's where the solution has to reside. We're going to work very cooperatively. I'm simply saying we need a plan. Look, a lot of times the public has demanded, or you guys have questioned sharply when there was a need for a plan on any number of topics, right? We came out with a plan on homelessness. We came out with a plan on affordable housing. We came out with the Equity and Excellence plan on the future of our schools. We came out with the neighborhood policing plan. You go down the list. Plan to close Rikers. I mean, each and every one of these were a systematic response to real issues the public wanted real answers on, and the media, raising concerns of the public, said, where's the plan? Perfectly fair question. One after another. Here's a plan, here's a plan, here's a plan, here's a plan. Now hold us accountable for the plan. We need the same thing at the MTA. We have a crisis.
Say you're working on a plan now, just in case?
I don't want to make it a gamesmanship thing. I want to be very straightforward. I believe it's very important that the governor said the other day he understands it's his responsibility. I believe the MTA's all along been trying to address the issue. I don't want to say that people at the MTA haven't been trying. I believe they have been trying. But we need a plan. So let's see a plan. Let's see what is the maximum the MTA can do to address the crisis of train breakdowns, signal problems, electrical breakdowns. Let's see what they got. As I said, even if it means shifting resources away from other things, because this is happening right now. This is affecting people right now. And there has to be something different. What did Albert Einstein teach us? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So the MTA has to do something different. I have every reason to believe they are working on that plan. If we don't see something, we'll come forward with ideas for sure. Thanks, everyone.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think Einstein said that one. You should look it up.
I have so often heard of as Einstein.
It's not Einstein. Look it up.
If I'm wrong, I still feel comfortable quoting it. But Thomas Paine said it would be insanity.